Okay, so welcome all. Let's go through the introduction. Just a couple of minutes, guys. So about the talk, it's pretty much this month we have a really rare opportunity to hear from two Scaled Agile Inc. experts, Harry and Jen, and on the impact of DataOps in the enterprise and creating better products using DataOps practices in SAFe. So data definitely has become critical importance across the enterprises. It influences business decisions, creates better products, improves way of the products are developed, and drives operational efficiency. So this talk will actually describe that critical role that data plays in the enterprise, the DataOps process to manage the delivery extensive volumes of data, and how to apply these DataOps practices in SAFe. So about our speakers, so Harry is a fellow and principal consultant at Scaled Agile Inc., where he has helps organizations build and deliver solutions faster, more predictably, and with high quality. And he has spent the past 2 decades consulting with aerospace, defense, automotive, and other organizations to adopt better engineering practices, including lean, agile, MBSE, requirement management, quality management, and the related activities necessary to support compliance. Jen is data scientist and the analytics architect at Scaled Agile Inc., where she and her team optimize data, build purpose-driven data products, and deliver decision science solutions to enable SI to make decisions at the speed of data. Brilliant speed of data. I love that expression. She has spent the past 2 decades in both consulting and internal delivery roles to have business build, develop, and maintain complex data solutions that enable advanced analytics and data science technologies. So before we begin, I would like to welcome Rob Howard, VP Asia Pacific at SAI, and Belinda T, the country manager for Australia and New Zealand at SAI. And they will bring us latest news from Scale Agile. We'll hear from them towards the end, probably 5 minutes before the hour. So the presentation is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube in near future. Please stay on mute during the presentation. There will be Q&A time after the presentation. And during the presentation, please post your questions on the chat box. We'll address as many as we can and figure out how to address the others that we can't. Any questions before we begin, guys? Any questions? Okay. If not, let's hear from our speakers.
Great. Let me share real quick. Share my screen. Boink, boink, boink. Let me know if you can see it. Can you see it?
Yep.
Perfect. Great. Well, thanks everybody and welcome. I think it's morning there, Australian time, and evening our time. So we're all here at the meetup together. So we embarked, I don't know, about a year or so ago on a journey to learn more about AI, data, cloud. We're always trying to look at what's the next thing, right? We talk about the framework, and if you look at the Business Agility article in the framework, it talks about Carlotta Perez and looking at where's investment capital going, and it was going into software, right? And that's how come we're in the digital age. Well, if you look at where investment capital is going and has been going over the last few years, probably 3 to 5, it's going into companies that are data driven and AI driven. And so that's something we embarked about a year ago to start saying, hey, we need better guidance in SAFe about how do you do AI in SAFe? And AI requires a lot of data, and it's got to be cloud native, right? You're not going to get there without being in the cloud. So we started this journey to learn more about what organizations are doing to integrate that at large scale. And of course, we have data scientists like Jen Bates, who's our data team at Scaled Agile. So she went on this journey with us. And we're starting to publish articles. We published an AI article about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. We published a big data article that Jen and I collaborated on the last, probably about, what, 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago. And we're working on a cloud article that you should see coming out in the next, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 weeks or so. So we want to keep evolving the guidance and the framework. And so we're here to talk about that middle one, that, what do we learn as we did the journey around better understanding data in the world. We already had the introductions, so we can skip that. Brief agenda. This is a meetup. We don't want to bore you with slides and PowerPoints. We're going to go quick to a little presentation here, but we want to talk about why DataOps, why do we need DataOps, what does big data look like? What is data ops and big data, and how are big enterprises doing it? And then how do you do it in SAFe, right? We are a Scaled Agile Framework company, so we got to fit this guidance into what we already do in SAFe and how our companies operate with SAFe. So let's talk about why data ops. So really the goal is to improve products, right? We talk about A/B testing. You know, I'm gonna show different customer segments a certain thing. Well, how do you make that happen? Well, we have to instrument the application solutions we build to be able to collect the right data. That's number one. That data can be used then by product managers and solution managers to improve the products, right? They give feedback. It can also provide insights into the business, right? Make our operational value streams more efficient, right? Business insights about markets and changing environments, business environments, and be able to optimize our operations. I already mentioned that before, and understand markets. And the last one there is AI development, right? So there's a great book we champion nowadays. It's on how AI is really revolutionizing the world. And AI requires a lot of data. Now, enterprises, organizations that you work at, they're not at a loss for a lot of data. They have a lot of data, but is it data that's usable by the rest of the organization? Most data starts in silos where I'm a product manager. I need to do this A/B testing. I'll instrument my system to get data that I need. And that happens across a bunch of different silos within the organization. So the question is, how can we take that data and make it infinitely more valuable by integrating it and aggregating it and presenting it back to these different constituents, those different customers of the data that we describe up there. And that's really that data ops process. It's the development value stream that really takes the collective data of the organization plus external purchase data and outside data and matches all up to provide purpose-built data products for those end customers. Next, I want to talk about understanding big data and data ops in the enterprise. Jen and I are going to kind of split this section. So if you've seen our big data article, I'll put another push for that. We have an article out there. We stole this guidance from the community. They talk about a data science hierarchy of needs, where we start about collecting data. There's a bunch of applications that are collecting data. It might be your ERP system or your HR system, or you got sensors out there, Internet of Things, collecting a bunch of data. And again, we talk about it's kind of silos. There's instrumentation, logging, and different kind of things we do to collect data that's on servers, and we can track users' behavior to some degree. But it's kind of one system's collecting certain user data here, another collecting user data here. And well, how can I put those two user data together and get a bigger picture of my customer, a bigger picture of my user? That's where we have to collect all that data into a data warehouse. We have to manage that data, collect it, cleanse it, detect it, prep it, aggregate it, and then eventually make it available to the enterprise in terms of those data built products and markets. We call them data marts, cubes, and views. So that's kind of the big data picture, is to be able to take this disparate data plus external data, as we mentioned before, and make it available to those data customers. And there's different roles, right? So we have to introduce new roles in our organization. Certainly, we've got the system architects and solution architects. They're out there building systems, and they're gonna design these systems to collect data, manage data for their purpose, right? It's optimized for their particular solution, their particular system. It's not necessarily optimized and formatted and structured for consumption by the larger enterprise. Well, that's where we have data engineers that might also be on those solution arts and solution trains. There are also other data engineers that are responsible for aggregating, collecting, and forming that data warehouse. And eventually that data is then consumed by data scientists and data analysts. Now, again, like all SAFe roles, there's not an individual, right? So there might be an individual that's a data scientist, but also a pretty good data engineer. So there might be a data scientist up there that dabbles down into changing the transforms and doing different things with the ETLs and things. So again, you may have individuals in your organization that they fit multiple ones of those roles, and that's perfectly typical. Jen, you've got you have anything to add, or did I cover everything pretty well?
Nope, you did great. Thank you, Harry.
Good. All right. Want to make sure. Jen keeps me honest, right? So she's the one that provided a lot of guidance. She's the one that pointed us to the data science hierarchy needs. So as I present this, I call on Jen to make sure she keeps me honest here. So with that in mind, we want to talk about what's the life cycle of data. Well, it starts up there in the upper left, where we're going to collect it from all these systems, and then we transform and aggregate into that big data. So that what we showed before is kind of this big, it's iterative. It's an iterative cycle. We do the transformation aggregation we saw before, and then we deploy and monitor those data products, those views and those marts and those data repositories. and there's ETL transformations that grab it from those disparate systems, manage it in a big warehouse or data mesh, and then eventually make it available into these purpose-built products for those customers. Well, then those products get consumed. Who consumes them? Well, the business consumes them for insights. Product managers, solution managers consume them to learn more about their customers. And again, I'm not just tracking my customers' behavior. Now I get the benefit of the broader view of my customer across their engagement with the whole enterprise, not just my part of the enterprise. And of course, we need governance about who can have access, when, what. There's a lot of data privacy laws out there. Who gets to see it? For how long do we retain it? And then there's cost. I mean, do we keep track of every click that everybody has sent us over forever? You know, if we do that, what's the cost and scope? That's something Jen educated me on about how we manage our data, and the balance between the mass amounts of repositories we could keep versus the maintenance costs and the of storing and managing all that data. And eventually that cycles back into better solutions for our customers and better data collection that feeds back into this whole process again, so it's iterative, and we keep improving the systems, make them better for our customers, learning more about our customers, which feeds back into that whole system. So Jen, I think you're going to talk next about expanding the details here. Is that right?
I sure am.
If all goes well, because I don't know what to say next, so we're good.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the cycles that Harry was talking about. There is no way to retroactively create and manufacture data in hindsight. So when we talk about agile data and going through this entire cycle, it's not a collect and once and done. You're constantly going back through that DataOps model to bring in new data sets, bring in new insights, add new requirements that the business has. So with there being no way to retroactively create manufactured data in hindsight, collecting data is one of the most important steps that we have to do. So on the next slide, you'll see, and Harry's going to walk us through the animations. You'll have to click the first one. I wanted to highlight the phases of data modeling, which is the first thing that we should be doing when we're collecting data. At the top of the pyramid is the conceptual phase, which really is the high-level visualization of the relationships and the business data needs. So you're not thinking about in this level what fields and tables and data. You're thinking about what business or analytical needs does my organization have, and you're building a conceptual roadmap. We'll look in the next piece of our pyramid here. This is where we start building logical data models. So logical data models start to show how our entities are related, and it describes the data from a technical perspective, but is platform agnostic. So you're not worrying necessarily about the way that we're bringing the data in and how it's going to look in a warehouse, but you are going to identify the actual source systems. And this is really the basis that we need for the physical modeling. And the physical modeling in the next layer of our pyramid here is very specific to the RDBMS, or the Relational Database Management System. This is where you're generating your schemas. You're using tools like maybe Irwin or DB Schema or ER Studio to automate this modeling process. So if you've gone through this step and you've started with the conceptual model and the logical model and the physical model, it gets pretty easy to build out your collection. All right, so on the next slide here, we've got some of the modeling techniques, and we're focusing really in deeply on your physical models. Now, not everybody on the call is going to love this slide, but this is really to highlight how those skills can play a huge part in your organization, especially with your SAFe implementation. So the first one we have here is the hierarchical model. So this is showing sort of the tree and parent-child relationships between your data elements. In the next one, we will see networks. So if you're a mainframe developer from the old days, this is going to look fairly, what am I trying to say? It's going to look familiar to you. It's not common in today's world. Doing network models is not a common modeling technique that we use, but in some cases, in some systems, they still do use it. Our next technique really focuses in on relational models. So we see this very, very frequently. And it is an alternative to the hierarchical model that we saw in the first one. So this is really starting to show relationship between different elements. We also see entity relationship, which is a variation of relational, and it's really great for transactional data. So when we have e-commerce, or we've got transactional data from like a website, this is a very popular kind of modeling technique we use for that. We also see dimensions. So when we start talking about warehouses, you'll hear star schemas or snowflake schemas. It looks like a star, or it looks like a snowflake, where you have your dimensions and your fact tables that go on top of that. Really, really popular with a lot of warehouse modeling today. And lastly, we see object-oriented. It's a lot like entity relationship diagramming. It's much more used in object-oriented programming. So when I started out with IBM, we did a lot of object-oriented programming in the 80s and 90s. It's not as common today in our world, but we definitely do see a difference when we start doing class groupings. But object databases are really still a niche. All right, let's take a look at the next slide. So let's talk a little bit about transforming and aggregating. You heard Harry say ETL. We have ETL and ELT, which stands for extract, transform, and load, or extract, load, and transform. Many companies really do prefer that last one, extract, load it, and then transform it in your warehouse where you can have your transient tables, your transformation tables that are handling massive amounts of data in one place. And then you've got a nice consolidated set of data that you can serve up. We also have different ways that we are transforming data, including normalization, smoothing, aggregation, reduction, generalization. I'm just going to touch on a couple of these. So normalizing is how you can get your data into your warehouse and get it all conforming to the same kind of standards. So you're scrubbing things like data types and making sure that things are numerical, or if they're geographic, you're getting them converted into those right data types. Smoothing is all about reducing noise in your data sets. Reduction is an interesting one. Reduction is where we are looking to convert things from small sort of intervals and categorical data into something that's a little bit larger. So we might be taking small data sets and making them large, or large data sets and making them small so that we can analyze them. I'm going to touch on generalization real quick because sometimes we don't think about how bits and bytes of data transform into intelligence. So we might be looking at maybe ages, but in our world, we might want to analyze young audiences versus older audiences, or mid-career versus executive level audiences. So sometimes this is a really good way for us to transform the data so that we can serve up intelligence much faster than if we were just to consume raw data in a visualization tool. And then the last piece here is when we start doing warehouse aggregation. So once we've pulled it into the warehouse and we started to transform it and get it nice and clean, the last thing is getting it aggregated to serve all those different audiences who are consuming all this wonderful data. And this can be automated with tools like DBT, which is a data build table.
I have no idea how that happened.
Harry's going to skip to the end for us.
I bumped the end key as I was scrolling here. The end key is right next to the arrow key.
No worries, Harry. So now that we've got this stuff sort of aggregated into these data marts and these views, it's time to serve it up. So on the next slide, let's take a look at how we deploy and monitor these things. So as we're deploying, again, if you've modeled your data correctly with conceptual, logical, and physical models, this should be pretty easy to start deploying it because you already know who wants to use your data. But you do need to have some of this monitoring in place, which you do see in the DataOps model in the corner there, to look at data usage and number of users and response times and run times and query optimization. Because again, the worst thing in the world is to pull up a dashboard and then wait a minute and a half for it to load. So there's a lot of tweaking that goes on inside of our warehouses and our DataOps to get you the fastest data so that you can make all those wonderful decisions. All right, next slide. We'll quickly go through this because I know we want to get to the heart of a SAFe implementation, but consuming, governing, and enhancing your data solutions. So we've got analysts, BI analysts, data analysts, business analysts, visualization developers, data scientists, business and operational teams, executive leadership teams, customers and customer-facing applications. Sometimes we forget that our data that we're collecting serves a purpose for our customers. So we really wanted to highlight that a lot of times our customers are using the data that we have. We also want to talk a little bit about governance. So Harry touched on a little bit, data sharing, privacy, residency, but data governance also needs to address our cleanliness, responsibilities, and our internal usage policies. And we'll see here in our next visualization here, we've got, you may not need big data, but you definitely need good data. And I like to talk a little bit about Goldilocks data. It's not the too cold data or the too hot data, it's the right data that you need for you at this right time. There's a huge cost associated with trying to store too much data. So start with that conceptual model, figure out what is really important to your organization, collect what you need, create good data so that you have good analytics and good data science. It's still a garbage in, garbage out world. And lastly, we'll touch on enhancing your solutions. So this data then drives better solutions. It enhances your warehouse, it enhances your data collection, it enhances all of your systems that you've got in your organization, internal and customer facing. And I think that's it for me.
Awesome, thanks, Jen.
Sure.
Good deep dive into the DataOps actual life cycle. Last, we want to mention a couple things about how do you apply this in SAFe. This is part of the research that we did. So we talked to Gartner, we talked to a lot of our existing customers, like how are you applying this? Certainly DataOps is a portfolio level concern. We talked several times about the fact that the data is larger than the specific value stream that's creating it, right? It's a more value to the organization, which requires an investment that's larger than the value stream, right? It's a portfolio of an enterprise level concern. It requires vision, investment, governance at those highest levels. So we already, the good news is in SAFe, we've already got the mechanisms built in, right? We have lean budgets. We can spin up it. We know it's in our DNA how to spin up a new value stream focused on a specific purpose, focus on data products, right? The data solutions, and we can push enablers and other epics through the system into other value streams to say, make your data more available, make your data, we can put standards and other guidance in those other value streams through the portfolio Kanban to prioritize infrastructure and prioritize those investments. Another thing that we learned every company that we talked to talked about centralizing the data function, which is opposite of what you would think. In fact, I was just talking to a major, large automotive company recently about, in fact, Jen and I think we're both on the call. And they said, well, we're thinking about centralizing, but SAFe talks about decentralized decision making. You don't want to decentralize the data function everywhere. It's like, well, not yet. Is kind of the guidance. We don't have data competency yet in our organization, right? We don't have a DataOps competency. We've got to build that out and understand how we're going to operate in our organization before we can go let the masses start to decentralize it. So that's one thing that we've learned is that we're going to probably centralize that DataOps pipeline. We're going to centralize maybe some of those data scientists and it's not all the data engineers. Data engineers can certainly need to exist on development value streams, possibly in the operational and enterprise, but certainly we need a lot of them and we need that expertise certainly in that DataOps pipeline. And then they can operate as a shared service, as a function to get closer to their customers. Kind of if you're familiar with team topologies, they might be an enabling team. I might have a data engineer live on an ART for an iteration or two, or even maybe part of a PI to help get them enabled on how to better manage their data so we can consume it a little better. So they're a centralized data function that produces data products, but their customers can also be those development value streams, other folks down there, but they also work as an enabler within those organizations. As an aside, maybe it'll start some of our meetup conversations about our last slide. I think, in fact, it is the last slide. There was one company that we talked to. I got to through one thing I love about working at Scaled Agile is we have access to a lot of people that know a lot of people, and I got to talk to one of the FANG, the lead. He's the data science lead, has over 200 data scientists, and they are. And when I talk about centralizing it, it was foreign to him, right? It was, no, data science isn't centralized, it's decentralized. All my people live on teams. The average team is a developer, a UX person, a data scientist, and we have these hundreds of people embedded on the teams. And I'll ask them, well, then how do you mash up the data? It's like, oh, we don't. I can run a SQL query across all the data at my company today, across all the different data products. And my takeaway from that conversation was their DNA, they're already digitally native and it's in their DNA. They're cloud native to begin with. They already have the infrastructure, their data infrastructure. They have, and this company, it's public information that they have re-architected their system multiple times, right? Every 2 or 3 years, they re-architect the system because they make that investment to keep making the system more usable, more consumable, and more data centric. So they didn't need to start out this way. But that was the only organization that I talked to that didn't talk about centralizing it from the beginning. And then the assumption is that after you centralize it and you figure out your DataOps practices, then you could begin to decentralize after that. Any other comments or observations, Jen?
Not at all.
No. All right. Well, so we're ready for any questions. I checked the chat and we don't have any yet.
No, we don't have, unfortunately. But hey, guys, anyone from the you want to just throw in the questions? Please just ask.
We could ask the community a question too, if there's not one here. What are the data practices that you have today? Do you have a centralized data function? How are you managing enterprise level data today? Or is it just, every value stream manages its own data? We don't have any kind of view of centralizing data or a centralized data function. It'd be interesting for our research to kind of mine that out of this community.
Oh, I did have a question. It's Mark here.
Hi, Mark.
Hi. The question was that sometimes, sometimes the requirement drives the need for data, but and other times the data informs the requirement. Does that make sense? So quite often I've found, you might have some need for specific data about something from a business perspective. But then in another sense, the business perspective, there is data available, and they play around with that data, and all of a sudden it creates a series of requirements. It's not, it's not logical. We've got a need for this particular business data, and it flows through. And I just wondered how that sat in terms of the model.
Well, certainly insights, right? Data provides insights that create new requirements. That was that feedback. We consume the data and we adjust our applications based on what we learn. We A/B test or we do something, and that provides insights on new products or new capabilities or features of existing products, for sure. Yeah, that's probably not surprising.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Sam, do you want to ask a question?
Yes, you go, unmute. Yeah, I was reading about reverse ETL, which is about maybe augmenting maybe a third-party tool with a data coming from your data warehouse. So instead of loading in data warehouse, you're retrieving from data warehouse, reverse, to feed another flow. I was wondering if it's something that should be think ahead. Is it a new approach, or is just a new name for the same thing?
Oh, great question. So reverse ETL is just what it sounds like. Instead of extract, transforming, and loading, you're reversing that process and pumping it in to your source system. So it's sort of that reverse load process. You're probably not doing transforming in your source system, but it's just a push back. And we do see that a lot when we do a hub and spoke model, where you've got your warehouse sitting as the hub of all of your data, and you've got systems then that integrate with it. It could be unilateral or a bilateral sync, depending on the needs of the system. But yeah, reverse ETL is definitely a real thing.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome,
Thanks,
Sam.
Hicham, would you like to ask a question about the standards modeling nodal databases?
Sure. Thank you. So we're trying to basically visualize the data model for our business units, and basically we have ERDs for relational databases, but I'm having trouble figuring out an alternative for NoSQL database. I was wondering if there is like some guideline for that.
I would start with network for what you're working on, and start with a network model. And maybe that's the best way to start mapping out your conceptual model, is in a network way.
Okay.
Cool, thank you. Lim?
Hey, I'm just wondering. I'd like to get some insight from the expert. That they at the senior exec level, what is the best way to segue a conversation around DataOps, the market intelligence, consumer behavior? How do you engage exec at sort of this level of conversation? That this is really important.
Yeah, I'll start off, and then I'm sure Harry will jump in. But data gets expensive when it's not done correctly. And the more that you can tie ROI back to a data model, the more success you'll have with an executive. You can talk about cost savings, operational efficiencies that you gain, economies of scale when you've got all the right data in the right place, as well as being able to centralize your data so you have a one view of your customers. And I think that's a really, really important key concept that an executive has is they want to know everything about that customer. How do we increase our footprint in that with that customer, increase an upsell? So if you've got a good 360-degree view of your customer and you've got that data sourcing in your warehouse, you've got that conversation that hopefully will solve itself.
Very useful.
Harry?
Thank you.
Yeah, Harry, what do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, so you kind of are beginning, in my mind, answering your own questions, right? As Jen said, we need a return on investment, but why are they thinking about data and DataOps, right? Do they need more market intelligence? Do they need better understand their consumers? Do they need insights into the market? And really, if you don't have some kind of data strategy today from a business perspective, you're behind, right? And frankly, this is what caught our eye is, I'm going to throw it over here, is this book, Competing in the Age of AI. And it really talks about the businesses that it's a book about AI, but a lot of it's about having the data necessary to go make the insights and go create the models that are critical to performing those insights. So a lot of it, I think, for an exec, what are their pain points, right? What do they need to know? What keeps them up at night? What are their risks? What are their concerns? Where do they think they see opportunities? And then really what data is there, it's to validate it, right? And as I say, data is the new oil, right? The more data I have, the more validation I have that my strategic decisions are good strategic decisions, that I'm making the right choices. And without being data-driven decisions, it's just insights and intuition. We'd much rather be using data to set our strategy and set our corporate directions.
Thanks, Harry.
Yeah, and I'm going to touch a little bit on a composable data model. And that's the way we've stood up DataOps here at Scaled Agile is we really focused on composable. So if you think about a holiday meal you might plan for family and extended family, and somebody decides to bring somebody with a food allergy, and suddenly you've got to figure out how to re-architect or re-engineer your recipes and your meals to handle a food allergy. So that's a lot what we're doing with composable data models is we're building it out in a way so that we can plug and play different source systems, different data marts, different processes without compromising the integrity of our data recipe or data meal. So composable warehousing and composable data strategies is something that we've seen a lot of articles out of Gartner on as well. And that's a really good way to sell to an executive too, because again, it's iterative, it's fast cycle, it's that plan, do, check sort of model, and then you can stand up successes pretty quickly. What other questions do you have?
Okay, I have probably one closer to SAFe. Jen, you explain kind of the process that you develop, the actual data model and everything. Would be interesting kind of to map that to in the SAFe continuous delivery pipeline. Example, which parts are you doing during the continuous exploration, continuous integration, and then continuous deployment and release on demand? Do you have anything like that? Something here from customers or some experience about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Harry.
Jen. So certainly we talk about that in the article, that data is a product, right? And like all other products, data has a customer, and we want to be customer centric, and we want to understand the pains and the gains of the people that are consuming our data products. So certainly we need to do good continuous exploration and good art. Part of what continuous exploration, as Jen pointed out, is architect. We need to architect this database to be able to support the current needs and future needs of the organization. And we deploy data products like we deploy all other digital assets. It goes through a continuous integration, continuous deployment. We have staging areas. We have development environments, staging environments, production environments. There's especially when it gets at scale, there's people that are consuming our data products. If we decide to change a row in a table or add 2 new columns, we don't want to break people that are downstream. So we've got to have staging environments that reports can get changed. And so certainly every aspect of the continuous delivery pipeline and SAFe applies to data because they're digital products like all other digital products.
And when I'm working with business owners and product owners and product managers, I really like to use hypothesis-driven development as we're proving out different things in the data marts and the databases. So we can start with the, we think this and we'll know it when. So we think that most of our customers are coming into our website and doing X, and we'll know this when we see a 10% increase in conversion from this thing. You know, it really helps sort of put together that here's what we're trying to solve for. We can build out that data model and we can continue to learn as we go. So I think hypothesis-driven development plays a huge key in DataOps success.
Awesome. Thank you. Philip, if you have a question.
Yeah, I'm quite interested in the ROI for data models. Is there any materials, Jen, that you could share with us?
I don't have anything that I can show you, but part of ROI when it comes to data models is how much tech debt and throwaway work you have. And if you're tracking this correctly, you know, well, we didn't plan for it and it's been sort of ad hoc and we've done it sort of on the fly because we didn't plan it out. That would be sort of the reverse. This would show why we would need to do it. I don't have anything that really shows ROI of not doing the data modeling, but I just know that from my experience, it's a pain. I wish I did. That's a really good one. I'm going to grab that, Philip, and see if we can find it.
Yeah, because look, on one hand, on one side of the coin, you have all that active purpose, if I could call it. You know, you have developed a data model for very specific insights. Yeah, and then after that, you will want to action those insights. However, on the other side of the coin, you will have data that's just sitting there, but no one has thought of how to then use it. And then one morning, you know, a light bulb comes up and say, hey, you know, I've got this data, that data, or this field, that field, and if I merge it together, then I can get a third field, which is something I could monetize, right? So it doesn't come up immediately. It's not something that you purposely built into a model, but it's a consequence of having that data and then using it in a different application or different purpose thereafter.
Yeah, and I think the point there is that, you know, your data models are never done. They're constantly growing and changing. Data never stops.
Exactly.
Data is never done. The data work is never, ever done. It's constantly changing. So the more you're keeping that refreshed model, you know, your conceptual model needs to be refreshed as you've got new business units, new systems, new customers, new products, new consumers of the data. You're continuing to refresh that conceptual model and you're eliminating that stale data. So we built it and we didn't actually use it, you're obsolescing. So that's just part of the normal life cycle of data.
Yeah, because I mean, look, I think this is the nightmares of data architects, isn't it? That you start off with one model, and then after that, when as your business grow and you got new insights and you want to then spin off new insights, then you you know say, look, what if I want to have this bit of data, and the architect then come back and says, nope, can't do that because we didn't plan for it.
Can you repeat that last question, Philip?
It's a nightmare of data architects or those who are coming up with a model, because then as you outgrow the initial design, then you know, if you're going after different bits of data of data that's not catered for in the original design, architects will then say, look, you know, can't do because we didn't cater for it.
Yep. And if you're building in like a star schema, like I said, it's composable. So you're able to pull off the things that aren't being used anymore, that don't make sense anymore, without breaking the entire model.
Question is that how often do we go back and clean it up?
Harry, can you repeat the question for me? I'm just having trouble understanding.
Yeah, so how often do you go back and clean it up? How often do you go back and clean up?
Oh, we do that. Yeah, we do that every PI. So we build tech debt and maintenance into every PI so we can stay ahead of it, because data moves so fast and grows so fast that it becomes a nightmare. So it should be part of your normal process is cleaning out that tech debt data, that stale data, those old models.
Oh, okay. Every PI, that's interesting. Thank you for that. That's good insights.
I'm not going to say we're always successful, but we certainly try every PI. It's like laundry. Like laundry. If you let it pile up, you're going to do laundry all weekend. But if you can do a
Wow.
load of laundry every day, then you don't have towels and bedding and everything that you've got to do on the weekend. So a little frequently, doing a little bit every few weeks, every few iterations can help keep it managed.
I could see a smile from Mikhail. Do you have personal experiences there, mate?
Come again, sorry?
I could see a smile from you. Do you have personal experience in this area?
Look, it's a generic thing in agile software development, always to allow a bit of capacity exactly for these things, and that's a kind of the common theme, I would say, because a lot of time you're pressured by the business to say, just functional, and all the kind of, let's say refactoring or cleaning up the code and stuff like that becomes and then as you go along, it becomes even slower and slower and slower. So yeah, a lot of time, especially in the, if you have that, I would say the only reasonable way I have heard to get out of it is during the innovation and planning sprint, actually the first week, to say, hey, I'm really, really focusing on this, and kind of plan if you have a very, very, how should I say, I don't want to call it, well, let's call it pushy customer, and you have to push all functional, that during that first week, just before you do the IP, the first week, actually, you kind of totally allocate that to cleaning up code, to cleaning up. So if you can't do it, ideally, exactly as Jen mentioned, every sprint you allocate a bit of time, 5-10%, whatever. But if you can't, then try to kind of lump it up together, at least that. Otherwise, a lot of problem, guys. It's your productivity basically comes down to half because you keep tripping on your, stuff that you haven't cleaned. So yeah, it's a common problem. Yeah.
And it's the
Excellent.
same thing that coders do, right? Application developers do the same thing. They're getting rid of dead code. Web developers are doing the same thing. They're getting rid of dead pages. Like, it's just part of the normal hygiene of development.
Yep. Want to build quality in, right?
Yep.
Constantly factoring, constantly making, we're never smart tomorrow as we are today. So tomorrow the world's different. So we gotta make things clean.
And it's never going to be perfect. So it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to start one way and realize that didn't work. We're going to pivot. That's the beauty of SAFe, the beauty of agile development, because you can pivot.
No, good discussions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Magic. Any other questions, guys? Any other questions? I'm burning with a lot of questions, actually, if there is none. I'm always kind of, on one side we hear the business data, exactly what we were talking about. Okay, but for me, being in development, I'm always after insights of the development process itself. Now, a lot of the tooling will give you all of that, right? The development tool sets and agile tooling will basically give you that. But it would be interesting, have you seen that data going actually into a proper data, let's call them art, so that you can kind of compare it between development shops and to say, hey, more importantly, I would say for a shop, because very often I get, let's do this, let's do that. But unless you have the data to prove it, you don't know whether you are improving stuff or not. Which kind of boils down to, Jen, how you started at the tip. Okay, what are we actually trying to, from a business side of things? So do you have that? Do you have that, let's call it SAFe development or SAFe processes data? Have you seen that being stored or analyzed and so forth?
Which data are you talking about? Is that like user story changes or coding changes or?
Yeah, just say, amount of user story, velocity, throughput, lead time. Okay, how much, for example, gets redone? What is the average cycle for features, for example?
Those sound a lot like the flow metrics of Mick Kirsten, right? What's our flow velocity? What's our flow load? What's our and certainly like the the agile planning tools of Rally, Atlassian, and those folks, they measure some things. And of course, McPherson has TaskTop and the Viz product. And,
Spot on. But then you
yeah.
have the human side of things, you know, how's the team feeling? Are they motivated? Are they really learning more? Are they changing stuff?
Oh, those people skills.
Yeah, so it's kind of a mixture. In other words, you're looking at the development as a
right.
something that you want to see the data aggregated together to say, well, yeah, we improved the speed here, you know, velocity has improved, but the team feels not that good
Yeah.
about it. Or flow has changed, but we are losing people. They're losing the
Right.
shop. What's happening here? Why is this happening? Sustainability kind of thing. And, you know, look at that. Yeah. I'm just asking whether or not you've encountered anything like that.
Jen, have you ever collected engineering data kind of metrics instead of product metrics? It's more about process metrics. You know, I've certainly analyzed. I've been before I worked at Scaled Agile. I worked for we resold IBM products, and certainly we had a lot of that data, but it was more around the technical processes. Never we didn't mingle in the like happiness and do you like your job kind of metrics. But have you ever done anything like that, Jen?
Not really. We like to spend about 60% of our capacity on new development. The other 40 we're doing run the business work, maintenance and tech debt. But we do plan a lot of time for innovation because there's so much always changing in our world, from processes and techniques, languages and tools. So the more that we can build in that time to innovate and learn, that keeps people passionate and motivated, and it helps get the bumpy. This isn't the best part of my job when I'm cleaning data. So
yeah,
I don't know. Does that help, Michal? Is that?
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, the process metrics, I think people pay less attention to than the product metrics, right?
Yep.
And the customer metrics, right? We want to understand our customers way more than we want to understand our developers and our development practices. We're more interested in optimizing the operational value stream rather than the development value stream. But so there's things there, right? CD pipelines and things. But yeah, it's an interesting observation. And it rarely, I don't know that it came up specifically. Certainly we will, you know, we'll gather log files, but usually those log files are the operations systems log files, not my, you know, not how many check-ins or code check-ins that I do. And, you know, they're not the development tool logs. They're usually more the operation logs to understand operational behavior, not development value stream behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Thank you very much for that. Any more questions, guys? If not, perhaps we can, Belinda, Rob, you guys can tell us what's new. This is kind of what we try to repeat at each meetup, is actually have a good information flow, because despite all the information that is being radiated, a lot of people kind of want to hear it from, you know, what is the latest happening in SAFe and SAFe in general. So yeah. Oh, cool.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. First of all, thank you to both Harry and Jen for a fantastic discussion on DataOps. And especially Jen, I love your laundry analogy around handling tech debt, and I definitely want to use that moving forward. It's awesome. I've never heard it explained that way, actually, so it's great. So just a couple of things that I just wanted to bring to your attention. In case you missed it, we actually had our spring launch event a couple of weeks ago. So some of the things that were announced during the spring launch was really just new content that we've created or updated that's now available to our SPCs and also our SAFe enterprise customers. Now, I can send you a link to look at the highlights of the spring launch. Like I said, if you missed it, I'll post it in the chat after I speak. But some of the content included in that is around how to, there's guides on how to start optimizing your journey around organizing value. So there's some additional content there. There's also some content around starting up a lean portfolio, which is top of mind for a lot of organizations today as well. Another another piece of content to make you aware of is really also some of the addressing challenges around how to bring leaders onto this lean agile journey. So that's, you know, something that's also top of mind in a lot of organizations, not just globally, but here, especially in Australia and New Zealand, where we operate. If you are a SAFe Enterprise customer, you do have access to our Leading in the Digital Age program, which is a really good cohort-based leadership development program. So if you want to know more information about that stuff, feel free to pop me an email or Rob an email, reach out to us and we can go through that with you. So that's it from me. Rob, was there anything you wanted to add?
I think you pretty much covered it, Belinda. That's the latest. You know, just by way of introduction for those who we haven't met yet locally, you know, Belinda's the Australian New Zealand country manager here at Scaled Agile, and I've got the great privilege of running the Asia Pac region, so we've got people all over the region. But both Belinda and I are here local to Sydney, and we are just super keen to help wherever we can connect you with experts, either inside Scaled Agile or in the broader community. So, you know, we have people that are running SAFe either around the region or in North America or in Europe in every industry vertical. So telco, retail, manufacturing, government. You know, the growth of SAFe around the world is just exponential. The numbers in Australia and New Zealand, we're growing learner numbers on SAFe, which is how we measure our growth, at around 50% a year. So it's really quite explosive growth. And our job here is just to help people get started with their SAFe journey. And then when they're on it, help make sure that you're successful with it. So please get in touch with us. It's first name dot last name at scaledagile.com. So I'm Rob Howard, and that was Belinda T. Yeah, and really look forward to connecting with you in person and working with you to help you out.
So if you're in another region, guys, just ping Belinda or Rob and they can get you in touch with your local, in your geo.
Yeah,
because we do have a couple of people from around the world attending, so feel free, reach out.
Yeah, nice call, Mahal. So yeah, there's 200 of us at Scaled Agile these days, so lots of help out there.
And also, if there's other topics that you want to be discussed during this meetup, please let us know. Shoot us an email or get in contact with Mihail, and we can definitely help organise speakers or sessions around topics of interest.
Perfect. That's something you want to kind of know, but if attendees, for example, you want to present, we are looking at that as well, because what we are trying is to have a blend. For example, last month we had someone from DXC, where I work, to actually present their experience. That also is very, very interesting to see how SAFe is actually running on the ground, and there are kind of different opinions and so forth. So very, very keen to hear from you guys as well to present. I'm not after kind of a lot of people want to just kind of do a marketing/sales pitch. We're actually after the experience. So how have you experienced? I understand it's very, very hard. A lot of time you kind of are stopped by your organization, and I had that same in my organization. One person was stopped saying, hey, you can't present that. But if you can kind of sanitize the talk and get it to more generic, then becomes very, very interesting to say, hey, this is how I approach this thing. You don't have to mention customers. You don't have to mention numbers or size if that is kind of the giveaway who the customer is. But please contact us and we'll try to fit you in. Very, very interesting to understand that kind of experience that people are getting on the ground, and what are you facing as issues, so that exactly as both Rob and Belinda said, so I can help you with these things and address them in a proper manner. So if not straight away, probably in the next version, because yeah, I've been with SAFe since version 1.x. Kind of, so it's been long time, and I can see a lot of things that kind of are kind of popping up. Yeah, this is an issue, it pops up in the next version. So the response is really good. So unless you tell us and Sai, very hard to basically guess what you're facing. So, okay, yep, almost at the end, guys. Any last questions? Any last comments from anyone before we depart? Yeah. If not, I would like to thank very, very much to both Jen and Harry for allocating your time to this. It was really, really nice. I already have questions. Will this be recorded? Sorry, how can it be played? Yes, definitely. Looks like that's one of the key things that we want to kind of do, because that kind of improves the value that your presentation basically was today. It's not just the people, but future people who will be watching it as well, looking at YouTube. So thanks a lot again. And thanks, Rob and Belinda, for finding us fantastic presenters one more time. Thanks for all your support, guys.
Pleasure.
And yeah, thanks you all for attending, guys. So until next time, talk soon. See you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. It was great. Thanks.